Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at an Alterscraft portal deck. We've looked at a few different portal decks now. We've looked at a Coyotes, we've looked at a few different artifact decks, but this one seems to be what's kind of settling in the current meta for PortalCraft, and it's very good. I've found quite a decent amount of success with this deck so far, and it is a very solid deck overall. I mean, Omen of Destruction is great. You only really need 2 of it because you only need to trigger 1 to really get a decent effect out of it, and the rest of the cards do a pretty nice job of then supporting that and really just keeping things going. Deus Ex Machina, of course, the only one you want to be careful of because Omen of Destruction is kind of your big win condition. As far as other win conditions go, you can both flood the board with low creatures in the very early game. I mean, these followers are so good to flood the board. Also, artifacts do a good job of that. Otherwise, you're really just looking at Radiant Artifacts as the other way to go for a win condition because they are, of course, Storm and 4 damage, which is both very reasonable. So we're going to get into this and check it out. Sorry, while I was doing my little opener, there was the fan still going. Sorry if that was in the background. I have turned it off now. It's just we've had some very hot days here in Australia, and I forgot that I left it running before I went to record this. But either way, now that we're getting into it, our first matchup is against Shadow. No real surprise there. Shadow is being ranked as one of the top current meta decks. But for us that shouldn't be too big a deal as we flood the board almost as hard as Shadow does. Cursebound, oof, interesting one. I don't usually see that card played a lot, although I haven't fought a lot of meta Shadow decks right now, and I haven't looked too deeply into them because I'm missing specific legendaries for them, and I really can't be bothered going through that hassle at the moment. But they're starting off really strong, so it looks like some form of buff Shadow. Definitely going to be a trickier one to counter, because I don't want to waste a bunch of removal on this card unless I absolutely have to. I'd much rather get face damage, which is much more important for this deck. The Gloomy Necromancer, getting rid of the Jerry, so looks like it's going to be a Highlander deck. Which is probably why they were running Cursed, which doesn't surprise me. But we did a pretty decent job of removing that, and we're going to get another 4 damage to face. The real key to most of these decks is just going as aggressive as you can be, without of course sacrificing too much potential removal. Now we do get a Radiant on an empty board, which is basically perfect. Being able to go for 6 damage. Pretty much crippling the Shadow opponent. And Netherworld Horseman. That one's a little more interesting for me. You don't see a lot of Netherworld Horsemen around normally. But we're not far off lethal now. And with that Radiant artifact, we're going to be very, very close. So what we need to do is stick 2 damage to this board to win this game. It was a reasonably quick game, but not all games go this smoothly. Of course, you will run into ones where bricking is an option. But against Highlander decks, I have found that this is a pretty favourable matchup overall, as they do tend to only play about 1 card per turn and don't usually flood super hard. So I didn't really need to play Biofab, just did it because I could. Why not? We have exact lethal here thanks to the Hamlin getting to stick around. And that will secure us the first game for this video. And for our next game, we are up against a very popular deck right now, and that is Forest. In particular, usually Greenland Axe Forest, which is a pretty killer one to fight, honestly, most of the time. Whether you're aggressive or not, it can definitely be a hard matchup, as the ping damage and the aggression that Forest can put out is crazy. For some reason I was completely blanking on what the craft was. Either way, should be reasonably solid though. We started off with a nice hand as far as 2-drops go, which is really all you can hope for. Of course, it's still not perfect, but we'll take it. So our turn 4 looks reasonably promising now. Synthetic Beast should pretty much 100% grab us the Radiant. And then we can really throw whatever we want into the deck. We even ended up getting the Omen of Destruction, which is going to work really nicely in the next turn, once it works with, of course, this Ancient Artifact. Also, I forgot they put a Mystic in Ancient, not a Radiant. Either way, still a really solid draw. Carbuncle and Mortal Jewel, not usually a huge problem in the early game. Really only a super strong card in the mid to late game. And Insect Lord. Definitely removing something, it's always just a matter of what. So Omen of Destruction is going to allow us to remove the 4-2 pretty easily, honestly. We'll probably actually use the 2-2 to do that if we want to. Or the Ancient Artifact is probably actually much more ideal. Much more ideal for this. And we're still going to get a couple damage to the face and leave us with a 3-5 that can't be destroyed by spells and effects, but can still of course be damaged. So this is very promising. We are going to opt for, of course, more artifacts. I feel like that was the safe play to make against Forest. You want to have enough removal cards, in whether they're artifact cards or whether they're just straight up removal cards, to really secure the game in any situation you possibly can. Which is why we're just kind of slamming the board here. And leaving them with just 11 health. Not a bad choice. And the Peerless Shot is actually a pretty decent way to start removing things. I'm going to get rid of probably, yeah, my 2 highest cards. I'm a little disappointed that they're my 2 highest ones that just got absolutely tanked. But we're still pretty stable with a pretty decent board at this point. I do, though, tend to favour the Destruction in white since we can't go for lethal right now. And I decided to clean up my board just a little bit. Just in case I want to go for the acceleration play. Which, since they went for Korra, is definitely the way to do things. Most likely also throwing the Evolve down, which they did. No surprise there. Unfortunately, they are just out of range of my Ancient Artifact. But we're going to pretty easily set up Destruction in black, which is a pretty killer card at this point. And we could have probably done it a little cheaper, but we didn't really need to at this point. It was pretty safe to just roll with what we had and get a couple extra damage in. So it's going to be very hard for Forest to even have a chance at recovering from this point in the game. Ward of Unkilling, though, is a pretty perfect way to do things. I have noticed a lot of cards being teched like that for decks. Obviously to counter the Mysteria decks, which is no surprise. That's going to do a very nice job, even if it's just cleaning up a board every turn, as they can't outright just kill us easily. They really do require a pretty decent setup to kill us, which is quite decent for us. Especially since they're literally dead next turn unless they can heal or block more damage. But being able to block 2 damage is definitely not optimal. Unfortunately for them, that's really not going to be enough, so no surprise seeing a full-blown concede. So if you guys did enjoy this video, I do enjoy playing PortalCraft, and this deck had done a pretty nice job for me so far, so I'll probably consider playing it more. The couple of PortalCraft decks that I've done videos on in the past, both the Satan one and of course the straight up kind of artifact one, have dropped off a little bit in what they're doing because the meta's taken a little shift, and that shift has really thrown those decks out a little bit compared to what this one is optimized for at the moment, and this one does a much better job at just playing the destruction or purely playing the small followers on a large board sort of strategy that you go for victory, and it does a really good job of that. So if you guys did enjoy this, you'll find the deck list in the description below. Be sure to like button and subscribe for more content. Until next time, see ya.